Did that start? Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to start on number 10. So if I'm drawing each angle, and it's 105, so I start at 0. This is at 90. So 105 is a little past 90. So this is 105. You have to have the arrow, and you have to label it 105. The negative, I know, that's what I'm saying. This test is not hard at all. Negative 120. We start at 0. This goes to 90, so this is another 30. You have to have the arrow to show me I went negative, so this is minus 120. So the minus 5 pi over 3. So first of all, what is pi over 3? So what's 180 divided by 3? 60. 60 times 5 is 300. And I want negative. So 90, 180, 270 over here. Negative 5 pi over 3. Cakewalk. For the third, name one positive and one negative coterminal angle. So this is plus or minus 360, and this is plus or minus 2 pi. So 100 plus 360 is 460, and 100 minus 360 is negative 260. Plus or minus 2 pi. When I have 3 on the bottom, so this would be 6, right? Because 6 divided by 3 is 2. So pi over 3 plus 6 pi over 3 gives me 7 pi over 3. And pi over 3 minus 6 pi over 3 gives me negative 5 pi over 3. Did you get that, Jada? What? I know, it's a fraction. I know fractions scare you. All right. Everybody take a moment now and fill in the top. Okay, I saw some of you using our beautiful, beautiful foldable that we made, and I love that you were using our beautiful foldable, but you're not going to have it tomorrow. So you're going to have to use that little trick I taught you, and if you still don't know how to do that when we're done today, I suggest you get with a friend and figure it out. That's what okay, so make sure you filled in correctly. So square root of 3 over 2 and a half, and then a square root of 2 over 2, and then you inverse, it's a half, and a square root of 3 over 2. Okay? So did everybody, we're all clear that you have to have that memorized, right? Because I'd be sad, like that would, look at how much ink I would have to use if you can't fill that in. Well, each line will be something. Look how much ink that will use up. I mean, my pink ink, I'll be sad. So let's memorize this. Okay. So starting on number 16, friends, it's asking for the quadrantals. And these are important because these are the easy ones. Okay, so I don't want you wasting time on trying to figure these out because these are exciting because these are easy. So if I start at 0, I have 0 radians. So everybody knows the degrees, right? We can fill in the degrees. So it's 90, 180, 270. And then I'm going to put 360 on the bottom. So first of all, 360 is 2 pi's, right? So 180 is half of that. So this is just pi. And then 90 is half of pi, So this is pi over 2. And so this one is 3 pi over 2. So if there's one you have to memorize, it's the 3 pi over 2. You just have to remember that's pi plus pi over 2, which is 3 pi over 2. Okay? So that's the only one you have to think about, really. So I'm also going to fill in, because this is going to be helpful, is that the point here, my cosine and sine would be 1 and 0. And here it would be 0 and 1. And here is going to be negative 1 and 0. And then here it's 0 and negative 1. And my x and y are both positive in this quadrant. My x is negative and then positive, and then negative and negative, and positive and negative. So you're not going to have to fill it in on the test, but on the problems you'll need it. So some of you need to write it down to see it. I don't know. But if you look at this, that means if your angle is in 1 or 4, the cosine is positive. If your angle is in 1 and 2, your sine is positive, right? Because your y value is positive then. Okay, so next, let's do, these are the reference angles which we practiced. So if I start at pi over 4, and this is the one, if it's in radians, I need my radian degree, which is pi here, and then I need 2 pi here. And what's the common denominator going to be? 4. So this side is 4 pi over 4, and this side is going to be 8 pi over 4. So to get here, you subtract. So I'm going to take 4 pi over 4 minus 1 pi over 4, which is going to give me 3 pi over 4. This part, you're going to add 1. 4 pi over 4 plus 1 pi over 4 gives me 5 pi over 4. And then here, you're going to subtract from 8 pi over 4, which gives me 7 pi over 4. So if this is 30, I'm going to use 180 and 360. So here you subtract, so this is 150. Here you add, which is going to give you 210. And then here you are going to subtract, which gives you 330. All right, state the value of the special angles below. So first of all, let's do any that are the quadrantal. Does anybody see any that are a quadrantal? So the 90. So first thing, it's the quadrantal and it's 90. So I'm looking at right here, and my point right here is 0, 1. Next, the secant. Is that the inverse of the sine or the cosine? Cosine. So I want the x value, correct? So the x value this time is 0. So I have 1 over 0. It's undefined. We cannot do that. So what about the sine of 3 pi over 4? So the sine of 3 pi over 4. First of all, so let's do this. What's my reference angle? Pi over 4. It always tells you whatever the number is in the denominator, that's your reference angle, pi over 4. So the next thing after you identify your reference angle, pi over 4 I want the sign, which means I want the y value of pi over 4, and the y value of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. The last thing I need to do is I need to determine where this is. So 3 pi over 4, if this is 45, that makes 3 times 45, which is over here. And over here, I have a negative x and positive y. So do I have to change the value, change the sign on the sign? The sign is the y value, it's positive. So am I changing that? No. So it's the square root of 2 over 2. So every single one of these I am going to work the exact same way. Reference angle, value, sign. Reference angle, value, sign. Over and over and over. That's all I'm going to do. The tangent of 330. So tangent is sine over cosine, which is y over x. What's my reference angle? 30, right? So if you drew this, 330 is right here. So the reference angle is back to the x-axis. So it's this little part right here. So if this is 330, it's 30 degrees back to the reference angle. So my reference angle is 30. So at 30, what is the y value? On the bottom is 1 finger, so it's a half. And the x value is the square root of 3 over 2. In the fourth quadrant, is the x positive? Is the y positive? The y is negative. So this is what I have written. I have negative 1/2 over the square root of 3 over 2. So what am I going to do? The top or the bottom? Bottom. So I get a negative 1/2 times 2 over the square root of 3. My 2's cancel. I have negative 1 over the square root of 3. Why can I not do this? Can't have the square root on bottom. So I'm going to multiply by the square root of 3 over 3, which is going to give me negative square root of 3 over 3. Answer. Okay, I want everybody to work on these. Okay, so let's ask some questions. Since you were working, I heard some of you and you have good questions. And so some of the other people have the same questions. So first of all, the cosecant of 45. Cosecant is the inverse of which function? Sine. So this is going to be 1 over y. So that is clearly not the answer. Yeah, clearly not even close to the answer, just for the record, just in case anybody's wondering. 1 over y. So I want to know what's the y value at 45. So the y value is down, so square root of 2 over 2, right? So this is going to be 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. Which means what do I have to do with the denominator? Flip it. So I'm going to write it bigger so you can see, because this is not enough room. So I get 1 over 1 times 2 over the square root of 2. So when I multiply this, I have 2 over the square root of 2, but I can't have the square root of 2 on bottom. So what happens with the 2's? They cancel, and I get the square root of 2. So the last thing I'm going to look at My reference angle was what? My reference angle is 45, which is in the first quadrant, and both of the x and y are positive in the first quadrant, so my answer is the square root of 2. Reference angle, value, positive or negative. Same thing over and over and over. So this one was the square root of 2. So the sine of 120. So somebody asked me, what's the reference angle? So this is 120. So the reference angle is right here. What is this reference angle? 60, which is pi over 3. Pi over 3 is at the top. So do I want sine or cosine? Sine. Sine is on the bottom, so the sine is the square root of 3 over 2. Next, is it positive or negative? The y value in this quadrant is positive, so it's the square root of 3 over 2. So the next one, the cosine of 330. So the cosine of 330 is over here. What's the reference angle? So the reference angle is 30, which is pi over 6. The next thing I'm looking at is its cosine. Cosine is my x value at pi over 6. That's at the top, so this gives me the square root of 3 over 2. Next, is the x positive or negative in the fourth quadrant? Positive, so the answer is the square root of 3 over 2. Reference angle, value, positive or negative. That was number 23. We'd already done 24. 25 is tangent. So I know tangent is y over x, right? Okay, so what's my reference angle on 25? Pi over 4, which means pi over 4, the y value, square root of 2 over 2, x value, square root of 2 over 2. So square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2. And as Jada so eloquently asked, what happens when everything cancels out? What do you get? 1. So I've got a value. Now what do I have to decide? Positive or negative? So somebody asked me, I don't know where 5 pi over 4 is. Well, guess what? I don't either. So pi over 4 times 5, 45 times 5, what do you get? So which quadrant is that? Third. So if that puts me in the third quadrant, I have a negative x and a negative y. So negative divided by negative ends up positive. So my answer is 1. So reference angle, value, positive or negative? Reference angle, value, positive or negative. Same steps. So 26, what is my reference angle? So at pi over 6, I'm looking for the sine, which is the y value. Pi over 6 is here. Pi over 6 is here. And you want the y value. How many are below? 1. So it's not the square root of 3 over 2. It's 1, half. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. My hand, I'm looking at my hand the right way. So below is 1. So it's a half. Cosine is the x. Yes. Cosine is up. Sine is down. So 7 pi over 6. So 7 times 30 is 210, which is over here. Is the sign positive or negative? Negative, so it's a negative a half. It's a 7 pi over 6. So 7 times 30 is 210, which puts it in the third quadrant. Okay, so the values, this was negative a half. This was 1. You should get the square root of 3 over 2, and this one is undefined. Okay, so if I give you this, the square root of 3 over 2.5, which one is the sine value? 1/2. Which one is the cosine? Square root of 3 over 2. And the tangent is the y over x. Okay? So when you flip and multiply and rationalize, you end up with the square root of 3 over 3. Okay, next. So look, the formulas are on the test for tomorrow. The S is the arc length and the A is the area. What's missing? This is in radians, but if you're given it in degrees, what do you have to add? Pi over 180. If it's in degrees, you have to do pi over 180. So if you actually do these, you get 20.944 centimeters. And this one is going to be 229.2. It's asked for in degrees.